one of the first podcasts I'm going to be doing for Pressing Forward. And today I've got Justin Phillips, United States Marine, with me, and we're just going to talk a little bit about his time in service and what follows on after that. So, Justin, how you doing today, brother?
I'm good, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm great. Long day at work. Come home to three rowdy kids, and just trying to hang in there with the madness. How's your day go?
It's been good. I got off of work pretty late today, but finally got a chance to get home and sit down and talk with you. So I'm pretty excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, dude, me too. I mean, I've been paying attention. I think you and I've been following each other on Instagram for a little bit of time, and just to see the cool things that you've been able to post, and then obviously your journey as in the medical field. And we'll get to that stuff. I think it's awesome. We how the technology is able to get us all to be able to like interact with each other and kind of see what we're doing, after our time in service. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. But I guess we'll get started with where you're from and what got you interested in the military.
Sure. So again, my name is Justin Phillips. I'm a reservist, prior service Marine. Um, Born and raised Orlando, Florida. I spent most of my time, my early 20s in East Orlando. That's also where I did my reserve drills at, as well as I went to college afterwards. Um, as far as military, what kind of brought me into it, it was kind of on a whim. I come from a long line of folks in the military. My grandfather was in the Navy, my father was in the Navy. So I'd stayed in the Department of the Navy by joining the Marine Corps, but that
Yeah,
was a decision that was made, a little bit later in life. My dad always kind of had an idea of, hey, like, you should, consider doing the military. And I had nothing to do with it until I was, I think, a sophomore in high school. And that's when I got a little hooked by one of the recruiters. So
yeah, nice. Um, was it the fact that you were kind of sitting there like wondering what you were gonna do with your life, and you get some dude like walking in his dress blues, and you hear a little
absolutely.
clickety clack?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to say no to dress blues, right? You got, I think, in my opinion, the best looking uniform, the enlisted Marine uniform, Class A's. So yeah, I mean, it's hard not to look, and that's exactly what happened. We had a drill instructor, or excuse me, a recruiter rather, who popped in, during one of my classes, and he gave a spiel, and I was like, man, this guy looks like he's got his life together. So I don't really have plans, so maybe enlisting might be something that could give me some direction. That's essentially why I joined.
Nice. That's I think most guys will say that. I kind of have a little bit of a different story, but I did, you know, growing up, did you have any influence on like the whole start of the GWAT, like September 11th? How did that kind of, like ever sit in the back of your head? Did it have any factor in enlisting any patriotism, or was it just something you were too young, or how'd that happen?
So I think when September 11th happened, I remember pretty vividly. I was actually in fifth grade, so I was
Oh,
in
okay.
just the tail end of elementary school. So at the time, it really didn't mean a whole lot to me. Obviously, when it happened, I remember being in the cafeteria, and then all of my friends are getting picked up left and right out of school. So I knew something big was going on, but it didn't really hit me until much later in life, kind of as I started looking back on what was going on in current events and things like that, to where like it stuck. I was like, wow, this is something that happened in my lifetime. Something that could potentially propel me into enlisting or joining the military, or serving in some capacity. So at the time, obviously, I feel like I was a little bit too young to really understand the gravity of it. But as I got older and kind of looked backwards at it, it was definitely something that got stuck with me.
Yeah, it's I think most guys, obviously if they're a little bit old, you and I are the same age. I was in fifth grade when it happened as well. Um, I think, I can't imagine being, an 18-year-old kid
Sure.
or like somebody in the capacity to be able to enlist, because I know that when it did, all my buddies, older brothers' friends, like out of their graduating class, it was some like 40% of their graduating class, like the males join the military, and like a larger percentage of that was they all joined the fucking Marine Corps. So it's just
Hell
um, you
yeah.
know, it's It's wild. Like people know like the Marines are gonna get their hands dirty.
Oh, absolutely.
So how old were you? Did you enlist 17, 18? How old were you?
So I did. I want to say it was like the beginning of my junior year. So I was probably either 16 going on 17 or 17. So I ended up. I had to get my parents to come and help me dep in and all that stuff. So I stayed in
Yeah.
dep for a while. I did. Actually, I think I was in dep a lot longer than most folks. I was in for about a year and a half. So um, I depped in during my junior year of high school, and then like right after I graduated, I went to Paris Island. So yeah, so I was in, I did that capacity PT with all the all the other poolies and stuff like that. So yeah, I was like 17 or so.
Do you think that like doing the pool functions or like being in the depth for that long of a period of time set you apart from other guys when you got to boot camp? Or I mean, did it prepare you better, you think, spending that time?
They really, at least my reserve or my recruiting station, they did a really good job at trying to prepare us. At least maybe not from the physical aspect, but just some of the knowledge, like the basics, like kind of drill stuff. And I'm sure everybody's pool or poolee station or whatever does that too. Um, but I had the basics, on drill and stuff, at least like, how to march. And then some of the knowledge that came with that, you obviously, you go through Marine Corps boot camp and you get an entire history lesson of everything the branch has done since its inception. So, we had a little bit of that. And I think it did help a little bit. And, obviously everybody comes from different walks of life. So some people were more receptive to that kind of stuff than others. And I think personally, I responded a bit more to that. When I was in, not that it means anything, but when I was in boot camp, I ended up getting meritoriously promoted, and but I think that's something that might have come outside of just the depth stuff. So,
Yeah, that's so wait, when you say you got meritorious promoted, was it PFC or Lance Corporal?
so I was contract private, and then I ended up getting meritoriously promoted to PFC in boot camp, which is I honestly I forget about that a lot until I just think about it. So,
Yeah, no, I did as well. I got it for I was the scribe for my
ah,
my platoon. So we had like written our names on a whiteboard or like some shit when you get in there. And
mm-hmm.
Joe's just like, who the fuck is this Gilia? And I was like, this recruit, sir. He's like, you're my fucking scribe. You have good handwriting. Or he said, it said you have handwriting like a girl or a woman or something. Now you're the scribe. And I was like, oh yeah, aye, sir. You know.
I hear you, man. I was the house mouse. I was the smallest dude in the platoon. So it was me and another kid that I think we were like 110 pounds. So
Oh yeah, dude, I wasn't much bigger. I think when I went to boot camp, I was like 130 or something. I'm a little bit big. I have actually add 100 pounds and I'm 230 right now. So
ah,
yeah, I everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're fucking fat." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm just
hey, man, listen.
I'm just thick. I'm just thick, okay? I
There
still
you go.
PT.
More to
I
love, right?
still lift." Yeah. Actually, I've been doing jujitsu a lot lately. And I mean, I have like a full off track, but I have like a full gym at the house. Like I have everything. I mean, over the years, I've been collectively adding to it, and I neglect the fuck out of it. I should be like, just ripped and shredded, but I'm like lazy. Kids are like, "Dad, can we have some ice cream?" It's like,
Oh man, kids
I
always
want
be
some ice.
aggressive.
I
So
want some ice cream too.
dad
Okay,
time is
but
always the best time. So
yeah. But yeah. So you go to boot camp. In what year is that after the DEP? It was like 2009,
so
probably.
I joined. Yeah, so I joined in '09. I think my ship date was like June like third or something.
No
So I
shit.
yeah, I was like right after high school finished. I had like 2 days in between, shipped out, and then ended up getting stuck at the receiving area or whatever for like 2 days. So I ended up being in the follow series, um, and yeah, I picked up then. Obviously, most folks that go through right out of high school, they're in the hottest seasons of the year. So we were stuck in Paris Island through all the summer. We had a lot of Black Flag days and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I finished boot camp. Let's see, June, July, August. So August, I had the week of boot leave, and then obviously a month of MCT. So I went up to Camp Geiger and did all that. And then after that, I went to Fort Leonard Wood to go for MOS training. So I was a motor transportation operator.
Oh, nice. So Motor T, fucking, what's the your it's always like bullets don't fly without supply. What is
Yeah,
Motor T's?
if you
What's
can't
Motor
truck it,
T's?
fuck it. That's what
Yeah,
we.
okay, okay, okay. So like what was that like? I mean, going from boot camp to MCT and then to your MOS school, like I guess in the sense of the transition of being like thrown into this new environment or immersed into this new environment? How were you like, what were you going through when you're dealing with that transition?
So it was a lot of culture shock, obviously. I had a pretty tight group of friends that I grew up with all through elementary school, middle school, high school. So those are like the same like 10 guys that I still keep in touch with to this day. And when you're with folks like that for such a long time, you get obviously very accustomed to the way that they act and everything. So to go from a place that I'm really familiar with, obviously in boot camp, you kind of form a bond with all of these 60 plus other recruits that you're there with through some shared trauma. So I had a little taste of that initially going into boot camp. Obviously, made a lot of good friends. Some folks that I still talk to this day. But yeah, I mean the constant the shuffle is always tough, right? You're always going to be somebody new. You're going to be the new guy, the FNG for a little bit. So I mean, it was scary, obviously, especially as an 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid. You're not really sure what to expect and still trying to figure everything out, your place in life. So, it was tough, but you make friends and everything like that. So the transition was aided by a lot of good people. You being a Marine, a lot of the folks that you bump into in the Marine Corps for whatever capacity, they tend to become lifelong friends.
Yeah.
So it was a tough but good transition. And then going from obviously boot camp, everyone's a boot for a little while. You still have
Yeah,
the
you're
motive
like the
mentality,
rocking like high boot
high and
blouses,
tight,
and your fucking sleeves are like this tight on your arm, you know? Like,
the
oh, I can
backpack,
barely salute because they're just,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, oh, the backpack is an absolute must. If you don't have like
Uh-huh.
you didn't go on the either the MCX or the PX or whatever, like right
Hmm.
after boot camp and buy one when you went to IT or when you went to SOI, like
That's what you got.
if there's somebody out there that says that they didn't buy a fucking coyote
They're
tan,
full of
like
shit.
they're lying. They're
I still have
lying,
one.
dude.
Mine's in my
Yeah.
bag.
Oh, that's like that. You're like, oh, you got to have like a sweet new watch that more likely than not you wore
Inside,
inverted, so you
of
could be like,
course.
I don't even know the reasoning behind that. Like it was something like, oh, so I could tell the time when I'm like
When I'm
engaging.
shooting, because I'm gonna be doing that so often.
Oh, but yeah, no, there's that. I mean, it's funny to see there's that typical, and I guarantee you, like, other branches are the same exact way. When
Oh, sure.
it's like we make fun of it, but that feeling of pride and satisfaction after what you just did, regardless of MOS or whatever, it's like you get done with boot camp and you're a Marine, you got your cover sitting like this low
Lean
and
it back.
fucking tight salute. And I mean, like the feeling of pride and like motivation that you have is,
Mhm.
I don't think there's many things in this world that can really honestly match that. Maybe a lot of cocaine
Agree.
and like a bunch of naked women. I wouldn't know because I've never been in either of those positions before.
Sure.
But
Me neither, but
yeah, but no, it's like, it's really it's awesome that an institution like the Marine Corps can make a young man or a young woman feel that way about like one, the confidence they have in themselves,
Mhm.
and two, just like that the character that you I guess they impose on you, or it's like I don't know.
You help
I think
develop.
it's yeah, exactly. I mean the whole process, the JJ did tie buckle, the Pusan, Incheon, Chosen Rezo,
Oh
like
yeah.
drilling all that stuff into your
Mhm.
head, and then you get out and you're like, I'm ready to attack the world. Um, so
Well,
yeah,
they know what
what?
they're doing. They do a damn good job at it, and I think you're right. I will now and forever say like, but the proudest moment of my life it was when I got the Eagle Globe and Anchor given to me. And it sounds cheesy as shit.
No,
Some
no,
people might not dig it, whatever. But honestly, like I've done some things in my life, and through all of that, the one constant thing is like I just remember, you come home after the Crucible and you're dog tired, and you just ruck like 14 miles or whatever, and you're sitting there waiting in formation at the Iwo Jima Memorial, and you get your drill instructor, the guy that's been making your life a living hell for the past 3 months, and he gives you this token, and that was honestly, like I said, it's the proudest moment of my life. So
yeah. I'm probably a piece of shit for saying this, but I don't know where that original Eagle Globe
I
and
have
Anchor is.
no
I
idea
have
where
no
mine is
idea.
either.
Uh, my buddy, I was at his house over the weekend. He's a few hours from me. I went and paid him a visit. I'm like looking at this tiny little box in the corner on the shelf, and I'm like, there's no way.
There's no
I'm
way.
like, is that the original one? He's like, that's the original one. I'm like, I,
Good
I
for
would never have
him.
thought, yeah, seriously. Um, so what was like once you got to motor transport school, what kind of stuff did you guys cover in there? What were you doing?
So it was very. I mean, I obviously haven't been to any other MOS schools, but I assume they're all they function in relatively the same capacity. It was a lot of just for us learning the capabilities of the vehicles that we'd be driving. So um, the Humvees, obviously, we drove those a shitload, even though they kind of phased them out. A lot of stateside stuff we used those, but then we had the LVS training, which was kind of new. I think the Mark 18 was starting to come around into the fleet a bit more at that time. So a few folks got to go and do that. I personally didn't. I just got to get trained up on like the 7 tons, and honestly, it was like a month and a half or 2 months or however long it was of just like basic driver school, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and
But
it was
Is the LVS that like weird, goofy, like
yeah,
cab looking thing with like
it
the
has like
long body? It's like a
5 wheels and finite.
yes, yes, yes. It's a and that's like
Honestly,
yeah. Go
Cadillac
ahead, go ahead.
of all of those transport vehicles. I love that fucking thing.
Is it really? I never because I think they I want to say the PX truck when we were deployed was one of those
Oh
things that
yeah.
just had what is that what it is?
Oh yeah,
Right?
they can do the we had one of the other support battalions I think used one of those to go out to some of the forward like cops and stuff, and I'm pretty sure they use that because it's a big Connex box they put on the back of it.
Yeah, yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I just never because I never paid attention to what the fuck was in front of it. It's always me like lined up at the back of the Connex box, like hoping that it's not like triple XL skivvy shirts and like
Yeah.
some fucking it was like the only magazines left was like the black edition of Maxim,
Of
or it's like
course.
some it's like I mean not that I don't love black women or it's like it's just
Sure.
like I was looking for fucking something other than
Yeah,
this
right.
one
You're
guy,
like
I was like but so
completely
you
out of tobacco, right? Like
yeah. Oh
no
no,
more
there was
logs
like
left.
yes, there. I think there would be like some like shitty ass like I don't know, like there's either like some kind of like hundreds
Mhm.
cigarettes left. I mean, we just smoked Haji cigarettes
Oh
anyways. It was
yeah,
like
whatever you can get your hands on.
the money that you had to spend on buying. I mean, at the time you didn't even care. You're like, just you go to this like let me write my social security number down and just like
Here
give me
you
like
go.
300 cash. You just end it up. But so when you got done with Motor T school, being a reservist, did you just go back? Like, what's that process like once you're done with your MOS school?
So it was pretty surreal. There's a pretty quick divide between like the dirty reservists, like the tampons they always used to give a shit for. And I get it. Like a lot of these, I wouldn't say folks made mistakes, but they kind of realized like, hey, like my life now is going to be this for the next 3+ years of my life. So
Right.
I think a little bit of the homesickness kind of kicks in, and a lot of people start to get a little animosity that some of us get to go back home and hang out with our family and friends. So um, obviously there was some razzing and shit that happened, but whatever. But yeah, right after MOS school finished, I went back to my reserve unit, so I got a flight home back to Orlando. Luckily, my reserve unit was about 20 minutes from where
Oh
my
shit.
parents lived, so it's super close.
Nice.
And I checked in, I think, on a Friday, and then on a Saturday, when they were trying to figure out, what to do with us, I remember Staff Sergeant Irizarry. I'll never forget this guy. He was the platoon sergeant for third platoon, and he's like, "Hey, you're coming with us. You're assigned to third platoon, and we're deploying." And I was like, "Wait, what?"
No.
Yeah. So like right out the gate, I got pulled into that whole situation, and obviously it wasn't something that I was expecting. I kind of planned on using the Marine Corps as like a stepping stone to, like I said before, try and get some direction and things. But I had already kind of started making plans to start college. Like I had gotten accepted to the University of Central Florida, so I was like picking out classes, and then they're like, "Yeah, man, you don't have time to do a semester. Like we're going to start doing pre-deployment stuff pretty soon." So
Wow.
checked in, and it was a little bit more high speed than I think I was expecting. So
Yeah, well, yeah, dude. I mean, I once I hit the fleet, like I think it was in like January of 2010, like we still had even like we knew we were going to Afghanistan, but it was like an 8 month workup, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like we had 8 months to prepare and like do all this shit and that's like active duty guys. So you probably got on the deployment train like well before any of your peers that you went to school with.
Oh yeah, it was wild. And, the funny thing is, I actually bumped into a couple of my buddies from either boot camp or MOS school while I was in Afghanistan. It was
No
crazy.
shit.
And the
That's
funny
pretty
thing, they were
yeah.
all reservists, right? Like, so all of my buddies that were reservists, they got, sent back to the reserve unit, and same thing, they got spun up. So,
Wow.
but yeah, you're right. The pre-deployment training for us, I mean, yeah, you can tell me how your experience was, but for us, we had like pre-deployment training. So we got activated. I think it was a 13-month contract or whatever. So, I want to say it was like we started doing it before we got activated. So we went up to like South Carolina for a little while. We spent like a month up there doing just some basic stuff, and then came back home. And then we went on our pre-deployment training out to like ITX.
Yeah. Nice. And then is that all now, is this all stuff that you're doing in conjunction with just your reserve unit, or are you guys like you said you went to South Carolina, are you training with active duty units as well? Like you're going out and doing all that?
So I think what ended up happening. So I was the unit that I was a reservist at used to be known as Six Motor Transport Battalion, and I'm not super well read on how the organization is of these like logistics groups, even though I probably should be at this point. But I think Sixth Motors encompassed a bunch of different reserve units that spanned across the United States. So we had guys
Okay.
from Fort News, we had guys from Texarkana, we had guys from, we had one guy from New York. I was surprised that we had anyone. I think he's from a comm unit though. And then we had a lot of guys from Lubbock, Texas. So majority of the guys that I deployed with were from either Lubbock, Texas, Orlando, or Virginia, Newport News. So
Okay.
yeah, I think that's kind of what it was. So it was a lot of trying to get everyone to mingle with each other and start to work as like a cohesive kind of unit. But then after we got kind of used to each other, we all went out to Camp Pendleton, and that's where we deployed out of. We were part of CLR 15. Um, and we all got augmented out. So a good majority of us kind of stayed with the core platoon, but then we had augments, and some folks got pushed out. The maintenance guys got pushed out to a different unit and stuff. So it was kind of, I think, a culmination of reservists, and then we got some add-ons from active duty.
Dude, that is crazy. Because you obviously normal like I mean I don't really know how it works for other, but like an infantry battalion, you don't do like a workup. It sounds like, hey, sorry, hey chief, get out of here, go lay down, go lay down, out. Um, you don't get you're not like doing a workup with these guys or like your pre-deployment training and everything, and then like they're like, okay, first platoon, you're going like, they don't like split you up. You're
Mhm.
all like stay together. So that's
Sure.
kind of crazy, like to deal with, you know, gaining the trust and like getting to know these people, and then they're just
Mhm.
like gone, and now and you're sent somewhere else. That's fucking wild.
Yeah, it was a really tough one. So we had a couple of guys from our maintenance battalion that deployed with us or got activated with us, and so when I deployed, we were holed up in Leatherneck, so with most of the guys, and then we had a couple of folks like with the maintenance platoon that got sent out to Dwyer. So like not only were they just like out of our platoon, they were completely on a different base.
Right,
So
right.
these guys were super isolating. I felt really bad for them, and I talked to some of them to this day, and they're like, yeah, man, like we all talk about deployment stories and stuff, but like we kind of like we have other guys that we we hung out with, so
Yeah.
it's
Now,
different.
did you guys what was I gonna say? What year is this that you go on your deployment?
So this is we get in country in like summer fall of 2010.
No shit, dude. So you fucking damn, oh well, I guess I was thinking I forgot. Yeah, I got there I think in November of 2010. For some reason I was thinking 11, but so
Hmm.
yeah, we're probably around the same time. So what's that mindset like when you're going on this deployment? I mean, you're fucking fresh.
Oh yeah.
Few months into the Marine Corps and you're a reservist, so you're like, I'm not even supposed to be here right now.
I'm supposed to be like going to a house party right now.
Yeah.
It was surreal. I remember pretty distinctly, like obviously, we had this like going away party and stuff, and it didn't really hit me because I had been, obviously I was in California for a while, so it was just like one big kind of carousel. I was moving from one place to another and doing training here and there, um, but it didn't really hit me until we landed in. I think it was Leipzig that we landed in Germany. So we had we flew from California out to Bangor, Maine, where most folks typically go when they go overseas. And then from Bangor, we had I guess a small layover in Leipzig. And I was like, holy shit! Like I'm in Germany right now. Like I'm not in. This is my first time OCONUS. I've never been
Yeah,
outside
yeah,
my
yeah.
life. Like obviously they kept us all on a really tight leash, so we weren't allowed to leave the terminal or anything. But I'm
Right.
like walking around in this terminal, and there's everything's in German, and there's like all these
The
other
the duty
companies.
free store, bro. The duty
Oh,
free
dude,
store.
I was 19 and I looked like I was 14, so there was no
Yeah.
chance I was getting anything there. um, but yeah, so that's when it kind of like set in, and then we stayed in Kyrgyzstan, Manas, Kyrgyzstan, which is where, and
Yep.
I think most folks tend to go before they go to Afghanistan. And we were there for about a week, and we made our first attempt to get to Afghanistan. They had red air or some for some reason we loitered over like these mountains in like Siberia or something like that for like 2 hours, and they canked us and they pulled us all the way back. So we flew back to Kyrgyzstan, and we had all of our shit loaded up and stuff. And I was like, man, this is like the real deal now. This is we're actually going to be going in because we had some of the more senior guys, the dudes that had been to Iraq and stuff before, and they're telling us all about the combat landings and their C-130s and how they it's like a roller coaster where you take the big dive. So everybody was a bit nervous for that, but we flew in with the C-17 the second time. We landed without an issue, and just like anything else in the military, you show up and they stick you into a big classroom and they give you death by PowerPoint for a
Yeah.
while.
Dude, that's
So,
like some of the things that I forget about because I remember like even in Manas, they're giving you fucking PowerPoints. You're in that like customs holding room
oh
and
yeah,
they're like waiting to go through. And then you get into country and it's like you got to talk to some fucking JAG officer or
oh
some
yeah.
adjutant and they tell you like don't fucking kill people or shoot goats or dogs and you're like oh, I don't even know what I'm sleepy, dude. I'm
Oh
fucking
yeah, like I just came off like a 10-hour flight. Like
and oh, I fucking hate flying, so like I'm not good with. I think my corpsman gave me some like tramadol or some
something
gave me
to
something to like help me
help.
sleep, but it didn't work that well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you guys get into country, getting thrown into the classrooms, power death by PowerPoint. What kind of stuff are you guys getting prepared for?
So I think there was a lot like what you were saying, the basic don't fuck up or we'll hang you up to dry kind of thing, which I have my own gripes about. But it was a lot of that. We were trying to figure out exactly where we were going to be as far as our cans. So we had a motor pool, which is about a quarter mile away from where our living quarters were. So we got assigned our cans. We had to go to the armory, pull weapons, and like all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of moving in, like you typically would when you go to a new installation. And it wasn't until we got to the motor pool when we started the rip with the guys that were leaving that we really got any kind of like training on, you know, this is how they do things, what the SOP is, kind of what they've had already established, and the more specifics on what we were doing in country compared to when we first got there.
Yeah, now what kind of stuff like you being this like fresh ass new guy and you're like, holy shit, I'm here. What kind of stuff is going through your head? What kind of questions are you asking to those guys that you're riffing with?
So I was as a fresh Lance Corporal. I think I had picked up Lance Corporal, or I might have still even been a PFC. Actually, I think it was a Lance Corporal. So I had built some good friendships with a couple of the senior lances that were there. A few of them had deployed Iraq together, and there was me and I think two other guys that all kind of checked into the unit at the same time. And they kind of took us under their wings, which is awesome. When you can have somebody that's been there, done that, that has some experience to draw from. I tried to be as much of a sponge as possible. I just wanted to learn from people that had been there and that had done it before. So I think in that stage, I wasn't really questioning things. I was just trying to pick up as much as they were putting down as quickly as possible to try and at least facilitate like the transition from being stateside to going to a hostile environment, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I leaned a lot on my seniors and stuff who were great, and they were doing a lot of the questioning. I was just kind of following what they were doing.
So what? Okay, so then that what were they asking like, hey, how often are you guys leaving the wire? How many convoys are you going on? Are you getting engaged? Are you hitting IEDs? Like, what kind of
Oh yeah.
questions are you got? All that stuff.
Yeah, so it was a lot of the guys. So we took over. I forgot what unit we took over for. I think it might have been like CLB 3 or something. But they had a big motor transportation unit that was there, and a lot of it was just that. It was you know intel about the routes that they were going on, kind of what the expectations were, how big, or essentially how to run a convoy at that point. Because as you know, you can do stuff stateside or in training as much as you want, but until you actually get in country, you start to see where things differ from what is the hypothetical.
Right.
So it was a lot of that. The senior leadership definitely tried to mimic a lot of the things that had been successful with the guys that we replaced. But yeah, it was a lot of the logistics, and that's the name of the game for us. Was all logistics. So it was, how do we set these convoys up? What are the expectations? What are the time hacks? What's the tempo? And kind of how do we facilitate that? So a lot more than just kind of pushing outside of the wire and going patrolling for stuff, which is a surprise for me because I was figuring cowboy stuff. So
Yeah, that's and I'm sure like taking in that knowledge as like a junior, Lance Corporal or whatever, and this being your first deployment, it's probably got to be a bit of a shock to like start hearing guys talking about like, how long you're out operating and the shit that you're getting involved with, and then to think that, that word, the wire, like
Mhm.
that first step or that first patrol or the first convoy outside the wire, like that's always something, if I think everybody that's been deployed or like you always remember that first time,
Oh
like you
yeah.
always remember the first time and what you guys were doing and what the mission was. So, um, yeah, so that's actually a good place to take a break. You guys just got done with doing a little bit of the rip process. Take a break, and we'll be right back with pressing forward. And got Justin Phillips. So be right back, guys. All right, guys, cool. So we're back with Justin. And we left off. We were talking about you had just gotten to Afghanistan on a wild, crazy story of how that whole thing had even happened in the first place. That's crazy. But now you're in Afghanistan. You're doing this process of you're ripping out with the previous unit, and take us from there, dude.
All right. So after we kind of ripped with those guys, they progressively handed the reins over to us, and like we were talking about before, the first time we went outside of the wire, it was it was a pretty nerve-wracking experience. You always hear about all these stories, and the rumor mills kind of run a little wild when you get to a new area, and there's always some story about some crazy shit that happened like 6 months before or whatever. But yeah, so we started taking over. What our uh, mission set was resupply. So I was being motor T. I was bringing various types of supplies to these, bigger bases. So we went a lot between Leatherneck, where I was stationed, to Wire, which was about, I think, 30 miles south.
Hmm.
So that's getting closer to like the Marja area.
Hmm.
And then as we got more familiar with the terrain, the vehicles, kind of what it was to function as an actual convoy, we started to spread out to some of the other places. So we ended up going out further out west to Delaram 1 and 2 were two places that we did some resupplies to. We started to go a little bit further east. I think we had some guys that went to Pop Castle, and then I think the more kinetic areas, the places that we kind of ran into a lot more of the shit, was when we started heading up north, getting closer to Sangin and stuff like that. So we would roll through Nowzad, Musa
Yep.
Kala area, and those were all, at least for us, the threat for IEDs were a lot higher. We
Yeah.
routinely got ambushed by small arms and stuff. So yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so when you guys are heading up through like Nowzad and Musa Kala, are you on like what route is that, like 601, or because I know there's Highway
mhm.
One. runs out of Leatherneck, and that
Hmm.
goes what from Leatherneck east, and then
Hmm.
that'll hit. I've gone from 1 to 611. Okay,
Right.
so like up straight north through like Goresh and Nole,
Yes,
right?
right through Goresh.
Yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah.
that was when we started going out there, 611 wasn't it was like just starting to be paved.
Hmm.
So you're right. We would typically, if we were going up north, depending on if we were going up to, so the two main bases that we went up to on multiple occasions were Fob Edinburgh, which was like close to Musa Kela, I want to say, and then Fob Nole, which was
Yeah,
attached to it
yeah,
was kind of Cop Johnson or something like that. It was some SF unit was there when we were there.
yeah.
Uh, so when we would go out to Nole, we would take our route. We'd take Route 1, we'd go east, and then once we hit 611, we'd go north, and then that
Yeah.
would take us until the end of it, where we started to have to kind of make our own path. And then if we were going to Edinburgh, we would just kind of take off into the middle of the desert somewhere.
Yeah, isn't that crazy that like you could just be I remember like we'd be on like a screen line in the middle of the desert, like getting ready to either like coil up for the night or like let's see if we can find some IED in placers.
Mhm.
But then all of a sudden you just see like some like white fucking hatchback four door like ripping
It's
through the
crazy.
desert and you're like,
What the
getting
fuck?
we're
It's the
getting
only one
stuck.
too. It's
Yeah, you're
completely
like,
by
what
itself.
the guy's just got like 100 cartons of cigarettes and he's trying to get them somewhere to sell them. It's like, oh god. So yeah, what's your like op tempo like? Oh, hold on 1 second. Hey kiddo, can you go upstairs, please? I love you, fucking gremlin. Um, uh, but yeah, what's like the op tempo? You guys are going out on these convoys, and like it's got to be pretty hectic for being like a young kid, and it's like every day, every
Oh
other
yeah.
day. How kind of
So we would typically, it kind of depended on what the mission set was for that month. I don't know exactly how they passed all of the convoy locations and everything down. Obviously, it came from higher, but so if we were getting ready for like a short run out to Delaram or something, that's like essentially like a day trip. We would take Route 1 all the way there. We had basically, I think it was like 2 or 3 days leading up to the convoy that was all prep. So we would get like the Warno, we would get like a brief basically. So we would have like Intel come in, kind of let us know the typical stuff that you'd go through, like the 5 paragraph order and stuff like that. We would get any kind of inclement weather reports. We would get intel on like IEDs,
right?
potential enemy activity, things like that. And that happened. I want to say it was probably like right before we stepped off that we got all that because it was the most up to date information. But we initially got like a basic kind of um, manifest and roster of like who's going to be on what truck, what we're going to be bringing. Then we would have a day to go and pick all the supplies up because obviously the bases were your Leatherneck's fucking huge. So
Yeah, yeah,
we would go to various different places throughout the base and pick up whatever supplies we needed to, whether it was vehicles, other you know hardware that the fob needed that we were going to or whatever. And then we had the following day to basically set everything up, get everything into the sticks that we'd be, the convoy order that we'd be going in. And then typically we would step off that night at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
no shit. Okay, and obviously is that you do that for like the ability to negate the mitigate the I guess like small arms fire, or is it
Yeah,
just that you like just keep a low profile so they're not seeing you guys make
absolutely.
movement? Okay.
Yeah, so we it was a lot of it was we were also there in the wintertime, so it wasn't really fighting season. We definitely
Yeah.
still took SAP and stuff, but um it was mainly to, again, like you said, mitigate any kind of potential for folks coming out and want to shoot at us. So
Gotcha.
the earlier we stepped off, more people are going to be sleeping. We can drive through their backyards, kind of,
Yeah.
so with a surprise, so they're not waiting for us, kind of thing.
So did you guys you know, do your typical like 7 month deployment when you went?
Yeah, yeah. So we did
Yeah.
7 months. I think we got there like, actually it was kind of interesting. We landed I think like September 10th or 11th in country, and then we were there until like April 10th or so. So we were about seven
Okay.
months.
Gotcha. Nice. Now, through that whole process and like, all the things that you had experienced on that deployment, like what was I don't know, I'm trying to think of what was like the mindset, like every day while you're going through this and experiencing all these, like, I'm sure there's days where nothing happens
Oh
and
yeah.
there's days where significant things happen, right?
Mhm.
How did you keep moving forward? Know it, like, was it just, I'm gonna go home, I want to get home, or what kind of shit are you thinking about to get you through that?
It was a lot of that. Being in a bigger base, we were able to have a little bit better connectivity with the outside world. So, I was able to go to call centers and talk to my family, maybe once or twice a week if I was really, act proactive about it. So being able to talk to them and see how they're doing and hear how their lives are going, and obviously homesick for a lot of that stuff. So that was kind of the driving factor. Obviously in boot camp you always hear like the fastest way to get through something is just to go through it, right? Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
drag your feet, the longer it's going to take. So I try to be as optimistic as possible, but it's hard. Like you kind of go from being motivated and things like that to you get kind of lulled into this I don't want to say shitbagish attitude, but you get a little jaded about things, and
No, for sure.
you start to see how like the real Marine Corps is, and like that obviously wears on you a lot. There's just fuckery afoot with any unit that you go to. So we had a lot of internal issues that were kind of bubbling up that became problems and stuff. But I think the idea of just like you count down. It's like, hey, I've got like 23 days and I wake up until I'm like on a plane going back home. Obviously, when you're that close, it's a different story. But
Right.
yeah, I mean that, and I was there with my friends, right? All these guys, we got really close. Obviously, little spats here and there, but just being able to help our friends out to get through this thing was kind of what motivated us.
Nice. Now, before we move on from the deployment, do you have a funny story for me of some shenanigans that you guys are pulling while you were deployed?
So I've told a lot of my friends in person about this, but never on like a platform kind of like this. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
might get in trouble for it, but at this point, it's probably past the statute of limitations.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think you're okay. I think you're okay.
so we had a an opportunity to support well, it was MARSOC support unit, right? So they had this task force, Special Operations Task Force West, which was in Camp Bastion, and they got a call down the pipe saying, "Hey, we need a couple of your drivers. We're going to be going to set up an OP somewhere in the middle of the desert, but we need motor T guys to help us get some stuff out that we don't have trucks for." So me and three of my buddies were kind of like the lucky ones that got augmented out, and it was awesome. Like we go across the street and we're conventional military. We're not allowed to. There's no booze. Like very regiment strict stuff. And we go to this special operations task force West, their compound, and like people are like drinking beer and shit and like grilling and flip flops and fucking
Yeah,
beards. It
yeah.
was
I
so
was gonna I
cool.
was gonna say, like, no boot blousings,
Oh,
but they're
dude,
not
it was
even wearing
wild.
fucking boots.
And
You know, they
I'm like
got
this
flip
fucking
flops.
scrawny like 19-year-old kid, like, well, this is what the military can be. So
Yeah, yeah.
we luckily we spent about a week working with them to try and understand like what they want us to do, and so their briefings and stuff like that. And then we obviously did the whole process that I talked about before, as far as like getting the stuff that we needed and kind of setting up in the convoy.
Right.
So while we're there, it's uh, myself as the driver, my buddy who I was telling you before that had been to Iraq. I'll leave him nameless, but he was a corporal at the time. And then we got a 50 gunner on our turret who was their supply chief, right? So he's like this like sergeant, this young sergeant. This dude brings all the gadgets, right? Like he's got like fucking Dazzlers, he's got Islids, he's got fucking like an AT4 up there. He's got like more shit that I've just. This dude's rocking an EOTech on like an M4. I'm like, well, this is like
Yeah,
way
you're
out.
like, whoa, whoa,
He's
whoa.
got fucking pen flares and shit. So the rule of the road for them was, the convoy needs to be tight. We don't want to let any room for any civilian vehicles inside. So we
Right,
don't care what's in front of you. If you need to ram them off the road, you do that. But we maintain speed at like 55 miles an hour. These are big trucks, these 7-ton trucks. So we go out and we leave in the evening or whatever, or in the morning rather. We get to where we're going uneventfully. Maybe bullied a couple cars off the road or whatever, and then on our way back, um, we're coming down Route 1, and my gunner goes, "Hey," he's like, "there's like a sheep like in the middle that's like walking in the middle of the road." And I'm like looking, and I don't really see it because we're coming around a bend. And sure as shit, probably about 7 or 8 Vicks in front of me, I see this sheep, and there's like a little shepherd kid on the side of the road. He's like trying to like corral all these fucking sheep in.
Are
And
you wait, hold on. Are you Point Vic? Are you Point Vic?
no,
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
I'm way far back.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So I'm like, I'm looking, I'm like, oh shit, this is a sheep, right? So my corporal at the time is like, he's like, dude, you know what this means, right? I'm like, whatever, man. Like, I'm not gonna run a fucking sheep over, right?
Vehicle kill.
Dude, so I'm like, it's like the sixth truck in front of me is like, this thing is like inching closer in the middle of the road, and he is, doing what the SOP stands for. He's maintaining his speed and distance, all that kind of shit, dispersion, and he blows past it. And then, it gets a little bit closer, and then like the fifth truck goes, and it keeps getting closer to the center of the road. So by the time it gets to the truck that's ahead of me, it's like in the middle of the road, and this guy actually kind of swerved off the road to avoid it. And I've got maybe 75 meters in front of me, and sure as shit, this thing like walks right in the middle of the fucking road. And of course, I get a little bit of egging on from my corporal. He's like, "Get it," I'm like, "Oh my god, am I really gonna fucking do this shit?" And dude, I hit this fucking sheep doing like 60 miles an
Uh,
hour in like a 30,000 pound truck.
are you in a 7 ton when you do it,
I'm in a
or?
fucking 7 ton. I'm gonna
Oh
fully.
yeah. Oh god.
So of course, like I have a video of it, like from my buddy who was like recording it, and like, so long
Yeah.
story short, I fucking destroy this thing, and we finally get back to the compound. I'm like laughing my ass off hysterically. My gunner is like, "Dude, you got to confirm kill, like first one." My corporal's like, "Dude, this is gonna be a mess. We gotta take it to the wash rack before we bring it back to our motor pool. We're gonna get fucked."
Yeah.
And like we get in, and the guys behind us were like, "That was probably the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like this fucking thing just exploded."
Yeah.
So that's how I got the nickname Shepherd. Like they started calling me the Shepherd, and that's what all of my shit is in Shepherd
Oh,
acronym.
okay. Got
So
it. Got it.
that's kind
Got
of where
it.
it stuck.
That's fucking hilarious,
Yeah.
dude. That is fucking good. That's good. That's one of a kind right there. Um, do you have any um notable mentions of like I mean, I don't know if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. Is there any like traumatic experiences that you went through on that deployment?
Sure. Yeah, I think it the biggest moment of like oh shit that I think we had, at least for me, it was my first time going up to Edinburgh, and like I said, as the further we went north, the more Connecticut got. And we were on the first convoy that went up north. It was basically an escort resupply kind of convoy. So we had a lot of the local nationals embedded with us. They were they were bringing a shipment of seed to like the local community center to be distributed out to the locals or whatever. So we decided to give them some safe passage with us. So, we had these guys embedded with us, and long story short, it turned into a fucking very long convoy. We were out for 2 weeks. We
Oh
had
shit.
a couple of issues with IEDs. A few trucks got blown the fuck up. Luckily, everybody was safe, but it definitely downed the vehicle. So we had to wait for QRF to come out and pick all these trucks up. So we prepared for maybe a 4-day trip, and it ended up being a 2-week trip.
Yeah.
So we go out to, we finally get out to Fob Eddy. We're there for about a week waiting just for our sister platoon to come bring us some shit because we were essentially, black on
Yeah, I
food.
was gonna say they gotta resupply the fucking resupply,
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was bad, man. Like
Yeah.
all of us were out of tobacco. Like we were playing like spades had run its course. Like there's only so much spades you can
Oh
play.
yeah.
Um, so by the time we got the word that we were going to be going home, we're like, all right, we're going to fucking push. Like we need to get home. We're like a week and a half past, where we're supposed to be. So my other buddy, who was also a corporal at the time, he's driving, and I'm in the A driver's seat, just kind of dozing off or whatever, because we really hadn't seen a whole lot, and we're coming south at this point. And my buddy, he's like, "Hey, dude," he's like, "Dude, I think we're getting shot at." I'm like, "Fuck off, man! Like, whatever. We're not getting shot at. We haven't got shot at yet." And he's like, "No, like, wake up!" And sure as shit, like, we look, and like, you see little, tufts of dirt getting kicked up in front of the truck. Like, holy shit, we're getting shot at. So obviously I'm fucking jazzed. I might get a chance to get a car or whatever, and I'm like sitting there trying to fucking rack around into my M4, and I'm racking, and of course the moon dust is everywhere, and I haven't racked my fucking rifle in God knows how long, so I'm not getting it to feed or chamber. So fuck. So I remember I very distinctly I racked the chamber or racked the slide, and then I heard a really loud bang, and it was like this a loud pop. My ears start ringing, and I thought I let one loose in the truck. Like I thought I fucking shot the floorboard out of the truck, and like we're both like, what the fuck is that? And I just like kind of glanced out of my rear view, and there's like this fucking gigantic black scorch mark on the side of the truck. And I was like, dude, we just got hit with something big. So I'm on the radio. There's already chatter going off about small arms fire and stuff like that. So we radio up like, hey, listen, we're taking something bigger than just small arms, and we're all trying to figure out where it's coming from. The closest compounds are probably 300-400 meters like off in the distance, so no positive identification. We kind of have an idea where it's coming from because it's in a desert, right? The only place they could be shooting at is from there. But no PID, we can't engage. So we're
Yeah.
sitting there trying to just push through this ambush. And the whole time I was actually recording it on, I had like a little iPod like Nano. I've got like a recording of myself. It's super cringe, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, we finally get through, and there were some issues with trucks that got hit. One guy, his truck got hit like on the fuel water separator, so down the truck. So we had to do recovery while we're getting shot at, kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and then we finally push out of the kill zone or whatever they call it, and it kind of like the adrenaline tapered off, and I was like, holy fuck, dude, like we definitely could have gotten killed. So we eventually got out and inspected, and sure as shit, like I was driving a Mark 18 at the time, so we're in the LVS, and the armor kits that they had over there, it was two, I think, quarter-inch steel plates, and then it had like an offset and then another quarter-inch steel plate. Like if you were to look up, like it was like a cross section of it. And what we kind of surmised is we got shot at by a Dishka, so that's a
Yeah. I was gonna
Cal
say that. Yeah,
anti-aircraft gun.
yeah.
And uh, we actually saw one of our wrecker actually got hit in the door, same spot that we got hit. And they were shooting incendiary rounds at us. So it hits, and you see this thing like cooking off on the side of this guy's truck. And as I'm looking at that, I'm like, holy fuck, man! Like if this armor wasn't here, I would have been dead because it was
Yeah.
perfect, just under the window, right where I was sitting. If it had gone another maybe 3 inches through, it would have gotten us. But I think that's when I kind of like really understood that this is real. It
Yeah.
wasn't, we're just driving around through the desert. So that stuck with me. And, as a 18-year-old kid, you never really want to admit that you're scared about shit. So you internalize it and whatever. We just kind of kept going. But, that was probably the scariest portion of the deployment. But, as far as like traumatic experiences go, that was luckily about it for us. All of the guys that we were there with, I think 80% of the platoon ended up with some type of ribbon or something from getting blown up or shooting back or whatever. But we were very lucky. Nobody had anything more than like a couple of concussions. So
Yeah, that I mean, you can't complain about that, like it's like, would you rather have something bad happen to the buddy or like yourself, and then like, oh well, I got like a Purple Heart or like a NAM or a fucking Bronze Star to show for it. So yeah, that's good, dude. And trauma is in all forms of things. Like different people experience things different ways. I mean, being shot at is definitely something that will change the thought process and the way that you're going about things. It'll make you think, well, fuck, I could have died there.
oh yeah, absolutely.
So you guys have a successful deployment. It sounds like
Yes.
you guys are able to come home. What does that feel like when you take that step off the plane and like you're back in the United States?
It was it's like a recurring trend is like, obviously very surreal. We had like much like anything else, like you go away from like you go from home for a while, and you have this idea of what it's going to be like to be home, and it's never quite this what you were expected or what you left off. So initially it was great. I came back to sunny Southern California. We had like this huge welcome wagon. We were on the parade deck, and all the families were there. Obviously, my folks were from, like Florida, so they didn't come out to see me or anything. But it was cool because a lot of the active duty guys that were there, we had become very friendly with, and their families are inviting us to these places. We're so used to living with each other, day in day out for 7 months. You kind of get used to it. So it was cool. I mean, we were there. It was great to be back in the United States. I will say it was very hard to get back to garrison life after that. I do recall like making some left-handed salutes on accident. And they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Because you're like fucking around, you do
Oh
that
yeah,
little shenanigans with your boys, like, oh, hey,
absolutely.
hey, sir,
Yeah,
how,
hey, Cyril.
yeah. Um, so like, did you yourself or did you see instances of where guys like had trouble? I mean, you just said that you had getting back to that garrison lifestyle was different, but I'm talking more so like mentally. Like, did you see some guys were struggling in the sense of like adapting, maybe overcoming some like post-traumatic stress that they had experienced while they were deployed?
Definitely. And like you said, like everybody kind of deals with their traumas a different way, and trauma means something different to any person that you ask. And just because I had like a relatively benign deployment, a lot of my buddies in the same deployment as me, they had a hard time coming back home. Excuse me. I know of at least a couple of guys from my unit that I don't want to say they spiraled, but they definitely did. You get used to being in that kind of environment for such a long time, and then you come back to not only the United States, but a watered down version of the Marine Corps. They kind of just let the freedom, run free. And we had a lot of guys that got popped for narcotic use and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Obviously, in '96, it's like they tell you the first thing you do, don't smoke pot, don't do coke. Like,
yeah,
shit, there's at least a couple people that go out and do that. So we actually had there was a couple of guys that got stepped out just because of that. And then we had a lot of guys that were very disgruntled with the way that the reserve unit itself was run after, especially the younger guys like myself, because that's all we knew. Our experience with the Marine Corps was, not the reserve unit that we had been checked in for a year and a half. It was
right,
in a war
right.
zone thing. So we had a lot of issues with some people, a couple people NJPs, a couple people DUIs, like the typical kind of stuff that comes with being a young adult and maybe not having the supervision of a day-to-day Marine Corps experience. And yeah, there's a few people I know that not necessarily anything like suicide, but they definitely kind of forfeited a lot of the potential that they had in the Marine Corps just by making stupid decisions. So
Yeah, and another thing too that a lot of people forget to bring up is the fact that it's always associated with the PTS, like the post-traumatic stress is yes, it is from the trauma that you experience in combat, but ultimately there's other factors that add on to that initial stress, like financial stuff, relationships,
oh yeah,
your job, like all that stuff is full circle or all encompassing of what leads, and for me at least, to think that it leads guys to go down the path of suicide. And it's just unfortunate to see that you're able to bounce back. Like, obviously, you know you talk to Marines and it's like you're adapting and overcoming is like the what we pride ourselves in.
yeah.
If you can't get around it, if you can't get over it, like you take a fucking wall charge
Sure.
and like a little bit of C4 and you nail it on the compound wall and you fucking hit that you put a hole in it.
Absolutely.
So it's like it's unfortunate to see that guys come home and like you lose. I guess next I was just gonna segue that into like, did you lose touch with some of the guys that you had deployed with and seen like a kind of a demise or like a spiral downhill, and you didn't really know how to intervene and help them?
Absolutely. And it happened probably a little more than I wish I say that I saw. And obviously there were a lot of success stories as well. Like we have some guys that ended up becoming lawyers. We have one of my buddies that was actually a reservist in the Lubbock, Texas unit. He's a fucking F-18 pilot now, so he's you know
Nice.
out there. So we've had
Yeah.
like obviously our fair share of successes, but yeah, definitely. we one of my best buddies, one of the boots that checked in with me, he I lost touch with him. I decided not to reenlist. He stayed in. I remember getting a phone call from him at one point when I was in med school, and it was surprising because I hadn't spoken to him in at least a couple of years at that point. But he he calls me, and I could tell he was a little drunk, but he was asking me about, oh hey man, like was did I ever get violent when I was drinking with you or whatever, like when we were in together. And I spoke to him a bit more about it, and kind of got out of him that he was having some domestic issues and stuff, and he had just had a kid, and the typical bad stuff that you would never want to see in a relationship. So definitely some of those things that kind of happened, and
Yeah.
I it's tough, when you're busy, you try and make time for folks like that, but unfortunately it's easy to get lost.
Yeah, I agree. And especially when there's so many other things going on, and what you're doing right now. Um, it's like you talk about the success stories, and I think that I don't really know you personally, but just seeing the things that you've been doing, and obviously the route that you're on, it's a success story for most guys to see. Like, this is the point that you go through these rough patches and all these things have happened to you, whether you went on one combat deployment or five combat deployments or no combat deployments, but there's all trauma that's associated with different things. And as down in the hole as you can get, as shitty as things may be, and I'm not trying to speak for you,
Mhm.
but like, you're able to overcome that stuff. And like, where you are now, not saying that you've been down in the dumps, but everybody's got their ups and downs. But for
Absolutely.
you to be able to be in the position that you are now, and on your way to become a physician, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's the process you're taking. That just shows that you know Marines are capable of doing fucking anything. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the path that you're on now?
Sure. So right now, I am a resident. So I've finished med school. I'm a physician right now, but I'm in the training aspect of my specialty. So right out of uh, right back from the deployment, I went through, signed up for classes, started taking classes at the University of Central Florida. Bounced around. I didn't know what I could translate my military experience in with. So I thought I was gonna be a cop for a while. Went to go for criminal justice. Anyway, long story short, I bounced around and ended up getting a degree in biomedical sciences, the pre-med kind of degree that everybody goes if they want to go to med school, PA school, any of that kind of stuff. Um, I was lucky enough to have a lot of good people in my life that kind of steered me in a good direction, gave me a lot of tips and stuff. So eventually made my way into med school in 2017. I went to a school in Alabama for 4 years. So I was in Huntsville, Alabama for a couple of years, and then southeastern Alabama for a little while. But eventually got my doctorate of medicine, so I'm a physician. After that, applied for residency, and I got accepted into a slot down in South Florida for anesthesiology. So the trajectory that I'm on right now, I'm training to be an anesthesiologist, which is honestly, after an 8-year kind of trek, probably the best fit for me when it comes to medicine. I can't really sit behind a desk and do the primary care stuff that some folks like to do. I like to be more hands on. So yeah, as of right now, I've got another 2.5 years until I'll be an attending physician. So I'll be with the big
Oh
boy
shit,
pants.
dude, that's a wild ride, man. I mean, from being from and I assume what you're like 31, maybe
Yeah,
32 years
32.
old.
Just turned 32.
Yeah. Nice. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
I'll turn 32 this August. So
Nice, man.
but it's like, you see this journey that you've gone on from the time in the Marine Corps, being a kid growing up in Florida. You join the Marine Corps, you go through these experiences. You're tossed into this environment where it's like, now you're going on a combat deployment. You experience all these different things. You come home, and like you're gonna be at your big boy pants in 2 years, but it seemed like you really did put your big boy pants on. Like, right when you got out, you stuck to your guns, didn't really know what it was you're gonna do, but you continued to follow on with something in school. Giving yourself a purpose and driving forward with something. I mean, that's the name of the game, pressing forward. One foot at a time in front of the other, and get to where you're going. So I mean, it seems like you've really held near and dear to your heart, and you are where you are now because of it. It seems like you're going to be, one of those dudes who becomes a successful Marine. So maybe you'll be the next Rob Riggle. You can be a reservist Marine.
Maybe he's a
Yeah,
lot funnier than
yeah.
me.
Well, it seems like you're a pretty funny guy. So, but hey, Justin, I mean, this is great. I'm thankful that you were able to come on so we can get your story out there. And, it's like motivating to me to see that, I'm still struggling with a few things myself, but you being able to overcome, whatever obstacles that you faced, and now you're in the position that you're in now. I mean, that's just good for you, bro. Seriously,
Thanks,
that's
man.
fucking
I
awesome.
appreciate that.
So once you get, are you going to try to stay in Florida then once you're done with school?
Yeah, I think my wife and I were originally from the Central Florida area, so we've kind of taken a liking to where we're at down here, but it's just a little too crazy. So ideally, we'd like to stay in the state of Florida, but where in Florida, we're not sure yet.
Okay, for sure. And then it seems like another thing too, you're pretty active in the Second Amendment community. You love your guns, and I see. Did you just acquire some of those sweet dual tubes? Are those
No,
yours?
I wish. No, I
Okay.
actually, funnily enough, I ended up making some connections through work. There's a surprisingly large community of pro Second Amendment physicians that are a little less vocal about their opinions, but I seem to be able to find and root them out. And one of them actually owns a firearm company, and he's got all
Fuck
the
yeah.
big boy money that he gets to play with. So I got to mess around with some of his dual tubes recently.
Nice. Well, hey, that's just another goal for you to obtain right there, dude. You get into that once you throw those big boy pants on, you get that physician money. Maybe I'll be coming down to Florida to shoot some of your fucking miniguns or something. You never know.
You're always
Uh,
welcome, man.
Thanks, dude. Well, let's wrap this up. Hey, Justin Phillips, thank you for your service, brother, and the sacrifice you made for the country through the global war on terror. Thank you for the things you continue to do to this day, and I'm fortunate to have you on here. And always remember, one foot in front of the other, and we're gonna keep on pressing forward, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. It was great to sit down and talk with you finally.
Sweet. Hey, thanks again, man. So that was uh, one of the first episodes we got for Pressing Forward, and our guest, United States Marine and soon to be physician, full-fledged physician and anesthesiologist, Justin Phillips. Again, thanks, brother, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Take care.